Hi, this is Nancy Love, San Diego, California, for the Planet Peace Project. This is one of the micropeace studies. And if you want to find more about micropeace, look at the YouTube channel, the Planet Peace Project, or the website www.nancylove or www.planetpeace.love. I am Nancy Love, the Planet Peace Woman. I'd like to talk to you briefly today about arrangements and how if they're made by somebody other than our own heart and mind, we ought to reject them. I have known people whose parents tried to impose what job to perform as adults, whom to marry, what college to go to, and even things like what to name their kids and so forth. Well, parents can be all right. Parents are people who replicated, and as shocking as it may seem, I'm one of those people who thinks that parents do not get, um, as parents need to get achieved honor, not ascribed honor. You need to earn honor as a parent. You don't get it simply because you replicated. That is an ascribed uh, designation. It is not something that you've earned. So, honor is something that parents get because they behave in an honorable fashion. And to impose one's will on their offspring, particularly as those offspring become more and more capable of making their own decisions and becoming adults and fulfilling their own goals and dreams. It's a great shame. I've seen it happen over and over. We think of arranged marriage. A lot of people in a lot of families get pressure to marry specific individuals and not others, which is a shame. So, also in terms of profession, I knew a fellow in Texas who was one of the most fantastic musicians. He was like Ricky Nelson or um, some other great blues and rock decades. And when you saw his song lyrics, when you actually read his song lyrics, you realized he was a genius. He was a great poet upon the level of somebody like Sting. His poetry was brilliant and it was sensitive and it was compassionate. But he had to, all of his life, keep his career secondary to his day job, which was serving his father's interests in a family business. Well, having the opportunity to engage in a family business can be wonderful. And I've known people who've taken that opportunity and run with it because it was something they really, really wanted to do. They grew up in a specific business and it resonated with their heart and soul. But in his case, it didn't. And I've always thought it was sort of sad that he had to dictate his his life and times. The way he spent his life was devoted to a business that he didn't particularly care about, while he was one of the most fantastic musicians ever. I have known people who tried to impose marriages, marital partners on their offspring. That's, to me, a violation against nature. I know that in other cultures, some people have different ideas about what marriage is. We think it's a business arrangement, or a marriage is a convenient way to secure the well being of offspring and perpetuate the species. But I grew up in a culture, probably like most of you, that valued romantic love and choice over what our parents wanted us to do. I knew of a situation where, uh, and when the people finally met, one of the people was interested, but the other wasn't. And one of the people was involved in various levels of criminality, but the other found that those levels of criminality repugnant and had no interest in associating with someone who was involved in those sorts of things. And yet, for decades, really, the parents kept trying to pressure these two people to be together when they didn't have commonalities that they needed to, in spite of having an initial attraction. So I've seen it go awry very horribly, and I've never seen an arranged marriage work. In other families, the parents want the offspring to go to a particular college in a particular location, whereas the offspring might want to go to a different college at a different location and study different things. Khalil Gibran said it best: your children are not your children. They are the product of life's longing for itself. The product of life's longing for itself. So if you think that it gives you status to have your kids turn out a certain way, to heck with your status. You were just used by nature or the creator or God or something to generate life, because life must have itself. So back off and let your kids be who they were born to be. In particular, I have known people who pressured their offspring into the following careers: military, law, medicine, and I think those are the main ones. I've seen people just demand that their kids join the military. Particularly when I was growing up in the 60s, when so many offspring were protesting the Vietnam War, it was a very difficult thing to live in one of those families. There were people I knew who went to Canada rather than be drafted into the military because they were afraid that they would come back having murdered total strangers because the government pointed at somebody and said, shoot them. And they did, because they didn't want to suffer the consequences of not having done so. Or they might come home, maimed. They might come home with PTSD or traumatic brain injury. And what I pointed out to several people was that they might come home as someone no one could recognize anymore, because they had become people that even they couldn't respect. So I know plenty of fine people in the military, but I also know that it's not for everyone. And there is a place on this world for soldiers, there's a place for dreamers, artists, musicians, poets, educators, and people need to be what people need and want. I've known so many police officers and detectives and administrators who've said that they were born into a law enforcement family and pressured into the same. And that's a very dangerous job. It requires immense courage and dedication. And if you don't have the dedication, you don't need to have to develop the courage. It's a very, very dangerous job, law enforcement, in any community. And people shouldn't have to be cops if they don't want to be cops, period. Um, I have known people who were pressured into both legal and medical careers. And here again, the demands of those positions are extreme at times, and the requirements for commitment are as extreme as well. If you do not want to become a doctor, you don't want to become an attorney, you shouldn't have to be. So I'm asking people to stand up to their parents, even if you're rather old and you've let them lead you down a garden path that grows fruits and vegetables that you don't want to eat. Then plant your own garden, no matter how late it is in your life, no matter how old you are. If you are in a profession or a marriage or a context that you don't want to be in because your mommy or daddy made you do it, then grow up and show up for your own life. It gets real. Back in the 1990s, I was in the music industry, and I heard a woman talk to somebody in the music industry, a man, and she got real vociferous, and she basically started crying and yelling at him simultaneously at a place on 6th Street, the Entertainment District in Austin, Texas. And she started telling him that whatever he was involved in, whatever he and his associates and friends were involved in, uh, it was bad enough that they were involved in it, but they shouldn't be recruiting their sons and daughters into a criminal enterprise. Apparently, these people were involved in transmitting drugs across the Texas border or something like that. And she said, I remember very clearly, she was yelling in public that everybody had the heart of a mother and father, and everybody had the heart of a grandfather and grandmother in their families. And didn't they want their kids to grow up? Didn't they want to go uh, into fields of flowers holding their grandchildren's hands? Well, lo and behold, about a month later, how the Mexican drug lords had stopped killing so many people, and there apparently was some sort of peaceful negotiations and people getting out of that rather awful business. And the next time I was in that particular music venue, the man that woman had been talking to and that woman were were talking again. And lo and behold, he grabbed her, he hugged her, and he started crying. And he said that that was all on her, that he had talked to some people about what she had said to him, and that they were going to let their kids grow up to be attorneys or accountants or whatever. That they were going to let their own children out of the drug dealing business, and that they were going to. He said that he was crying and practically yelling too. He said that he was going to be a grandfather someday, and he wanted to hold the hands of his grandchildren in fields of flowers. He wanted his kids and his grandchildren to actually grow up. So that's why I say, this gets real. Parents need to let their children go. They let them out of the family business, whatever that family business may be. In another context I personally was in, I had a client, a photography client, uh, in San Antonio, Texas. And she was a very well known, popular person. She was in the public eye. And I was supposed to do some photography for her as part of a product development or commercial enterprise. Well, she was bragging about being Mexican mafia and how she was very haughty and arrogant and flipping her hair around, and how she was, the old hair flip. She was talking about how proud she was to be associated with her family and that they were wealthy and powerful. And I said, actually, your family is responsible for criminality, pain, death, torture, fear. There's nothing at all to be proud of. If you're in the mafia, for God's sake, you should keep that quiet. You shouldn't be bragging about it. You don't have bragging rights. You have everything to be ashamed of. And she was shocked because for the day at least, I was her employee. And I just basically whopped her at one side of the head and the other. And she said, well, you're criticizing our family's traditions. I said, traditions, murder, thievery, assault, drug dealing, money laundering, human trafficking, traditions. Are these your traditions? If you belong to a family that wants you to inherit a farm that grows only thistles, and when you touch the thistles, they hurt, and if you tried to eat the thistles, they would destroy you, and if you tried to walk on the thistles, they would hurt your feet. If you inherit something from your parents that grows only pain, why would you want it? Why wouldn't you refuse to accept it or give that farm away? Why wouldn't you take a torch to the thistles? Your family traditions would have you reign over. And she got quite the look, and she shut up. And I got at least a compliant client for the rest of the afternoon. I got some great photographs of her, but she became significantly more passive. And do you know that the next time I saw her, which was about 10 days to 2 weeks later, she apologized to me for her arrogance. She apologized to me for her uh, pride and her haughtiness. And she said, Nancy, I'd never really thought about it because I was told that I was wealthy and powerful and that people fear us. But she said, now I realize that my family has brought only shame. And that she said she didn't want those traditions anymore. And she became a really different person. I saw her many years later, and she was this beautiful soul, this wise, beautiful, loving soul. So that's why I say this is an important issue. Your family might be in the mafia if it's a bunch of lawyers and judges or medical doctors or politicians or military personnel. Mafia is an equal opportunity employer. This whole thing about parents of any sort imposing professions, colleges, education, imposing marriages, this whole thing over their offspring is wrong. It is bad. It is unnatural. And it really does violate nature. Because remember what Khalil Gibran said, your children are not your children. And it may even have itself through you. So let life make its own choices. Thanks for hearing me out. Talk to you later. In love.